The Type O Negative thing came about. That interview came about because I'd just done a tour the year before in America, and I was free and single at the time. So in New York, I was having a dalliance with a young lady who
there you go.
turned out to be Pete Steele's girlfriend, called Tara from Staten Island, and I didn't know this obviously at the time. So he got wind of this. We were both getting our videos played a little bit on Headbangers Ball, and he said he'd only do this interview. It was their first show in London. If I went down and did the interview, and I thought it was odd at the time, but I just said, okay. So I went down to London and I walked in the bar of the place they were playing, and he's like towering tall, obviously, and he had this big train driver's cap on. And he said, "Mr. Mackintosh, we need to talk." And I'm like, "Oh shit, what's this? What's going on here?" He told me about it, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." And he says, "Oh, I'm just playing with you, And we got on really well after that, and we did the interview. And I kind of stayed pen pals with him for about a year then.
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here's David and Joshua.
But, well, hey, welcome to the show, Greg. Greg Mackintosh from Paradise Lost. And David Ellefson, Josh Toomey here. And, man, it's good to see you. And you've got a new album and a new chapter, if you will, and then all that goes around that. So, where are you at now? Are you overseas, or you're not in North America?
I got back yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, home for about 4 weeks now.
What an incredible backdrop there, I think
totally.
We should change up our backdrop, David.
Totally, I know. It's like this is how to do it. It's like having a total fucking backdrop from the gig behind you when you do podcasts. That's totally rad.
It was a last minute thing, I assure you. It was just like, oh shit, where do I put myself? So it's because everyone always has loads of things behind them, and I don't really have a room with lots of things in. So.
Well, now you know what to do with all the stage scrims. When you're done, just cut them up and stick them on your wall for podcasts.
Well, Greg, as David was saying, you Ascension out September 19th. Kind of talk about the writing and the writing process for the new record. I mean, obviously, 30 plus years into the band, I'm sure you've got it down to a science.
Not really. I think you're continually learning. Sometimes you think you've got it and you've nailed it, and then it's like you'll hear some new music and it'll be like, oh wow, I never thought of that. So I think I take it all as a continuous learning curve, really. I mean, I don't think you can ever think a blueprint or anything, because I think then you get too comfortable, too complacent, and it gets a bit pedestrian then, you know what I mean? So I think you've always got to be aware, but still you've just got to kick back and see what excites you at the time. We always take time out after touring to write, because your head's in a different space then, you know what I mean? And you just figure out what you want to do and take it from there.
So what is the process? Like, who kind of kicks it off? Is there kind of a main songwriter, riff writer, sort of conceptualist that kicks it off? Or do you get in a room with just nothing and start jamming? Like, what is your process?
No, it's usually me. I mean, I do all the songwriting with Nick, our vocalist. And it usually starts as usually just a simple melody. Like you hum a melody into a dictaphone, or you play a simple thing on a guitar, or you play a piano line or something like that. And then it develops into something that's maybe, I don't know, 4 bars long or something. And then I'll send it to Nick. He'll come up with a few. He sings in a few different styles. So I usually get him to do like 3 or 4 different vocal styles and melodies over the top. And then we kind of use it like a jigsaw, then, like try and piece bits together,
Yeah. Now it's funny with that, writing for someone else's singing style, right? Even though you're you're writing the theme of what the band represents. Do you ever cross this bridge where you go, there's no way he'll sing that, or this just isn't his character to sing something like that? You ever run into that, and then maybe either change it or have to move it to a different bucket and use it somewhere else with a different outlet? How does that for you?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, what we've come up against usually in situations like that, I end up playing it as a guitar melody. If it's something he's not comfortable with or he thinks would suit better a guitar line, or vice versa. And that's kind of been our thing for a long time, kind of part of our sound, where what I'm playing on guitar, I never really play what the rhythm guitar's playing. I'm constantly, it's not like a solo, but it's like, a continuation melody of where the vocal leaves off and then try and lead it back into the vocal again. So we've done that quite a lot over the years. And on this record especially, it's very heavily like guitar line melody between. So it bridges the gap. So it's almost like question and answer vocals,
Right.
With the new record, of the tracks that are released, the one that kind of grabbed me the most was Silence Like the Grave. It's kind of just got a nice, it's almost like a thrash metal riff, but it's like so slowed down to such a tempo. It's got a great groove to it, man. Talk about that track.
Well, I mean, we kind of come from the doom metal scene, really.
Right.
I mean, we've done lots of different things over the years, but we started off with that kind of Sabbath, Trouble kind of thing, early Candlemass maybe. So we always try to keep it. It's like the brakes on. It's like, when you used to play a 45 at 33 and you thought it sounded better.
Right.
It's that kind of thing that we try and do. So with that song, yeah, we had a few riffs that we thought, maybe that's a little bit Slayer-esque, or maybe that's a bit whatever-esque, and then we kind of slow it down and detune it a little and bring it together. And the main melody for the song, the start of the song, sounded a little bit war-like, because we always think of music in visual or sensory terms, or at least I did when I was young. When someone said if something's really heavy, I would think of it more like, it sounds like a storm coming in or something, So that song in particular sounded very war-like. So we start to write the lyrics about like the rise and fall of empires and things like that, and why wars start and end, and no specific war, no specific period of time, but that's usually how the lyrics come about as well. It's just whatever a piece of music conjures up in your mind, where it takes you to. Because our music is escapism. I mean, we're not political. We're not. It's all about taking you somewhere else. I mean, a good example of this is one of our first US tours we did with Morbid Angel and Creator in the 91 or something like that. And they were both ends of the spectrum. So Creator quite left wing and Morbid Angel were quite right wing at the time. And there was lots of problems at shows. And we were just in the middle going, can't we just play some music here and get a bit lost in it, you know what I mean? And it was a bit frustrating, but I realize there is a place for that in music, for protest and for whatever else, but that's not us,
Yeah. Now, the presentation of the show, obviously, you guys have been known for that. I mean, that's you're not a thrash band, right? Where you just get up and some stack of Marshalls and stretch jeans and let's go, right? And no protests, right? But so, talk about how that came along. Of course, today we've got Sleep Token and Ghost and things that have, taken it, to the extreme and to the highest levels. But, as you guys were building the band as a metal band with budgets, record companies, how just talk about that whole journey with that.
Well, when I was growing up, I was came up through, my older brother was a skinhead stroke punk. So I got his record collection by default. And so I got into it through the sort of punk scene of the early 80s, and that kind of mingled in with the goth scene of the 80s that was in and around where I grew up, actually, Sisters of Mercy and all those bands. And I used to really love the stage, the shows that they put on, because usually it was a guy with a drum machine and a guy on vocals and not a lot else. And it was like, how do they put on a show? So they just used to have a few floor cans and a few cans up here somewhere, and it'd just be shining through, and you just see silhouettes. And I always thought that was really cool. And on a budget, that's a really good way of putting on a good show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you just have, you do shadows and silhouettes and things like that. And also, we played with The Cure in the late 80s once in France. And they just had like white silk hanging from the trusses,
Mm-hmm.
and wind machines at either side of the silk, and just a few lights, few little lights dotted about. And I expected to see a big stage show, and it was just that, but it was so effective once the lights went down. You know, like these silks blowing, and then the lights and the shadows bouncing off it. And I guess it's what you do with it, isn't it? Budget wise, you've got to use your imagination well, especially when you haven't got the Sleep Token budgets or the Ghost budgets. You know?
Sure, right, yeah. You know, it's funny you say that about Sisters of Mercy. I remember Megadeth Exodus. We'd played at the Kabuki Theater in San Francisco, and this is probably 1985. You know, thrash was coming up big, and Exodus were the big hometown heroes. You know, and that I stayed behind the next night, went and saw Sisters of Mercy. And it's the same thing. I liked them. I thought my guitar tech was into them, and you know, they were that, and the Cult, the Love album, I thought was cool, and that early Cure, everything you just said, and that was a scene. And it took me kind of 3-4 songs, and I realized, hey, wait a minute, where's the drummer? And you're right. It was a drum machine. You got a guitar player just going over and turning on the drum machine. I'm like, fuck, I do that in my bedroom when I'm writing songs. You know what I mean? Like, I can do this. But you're right. It was very clever. I mean, maybe the early days of sampling and digital, digital drummer. I guess who knew drummers were the first to become digital, because now it's all guitar processing, that's digital. Right. It's like, you think about it, it's like, why bring a drum kit when you can just bring the drum machine, because, that isn't that today, it's like, why bring cabinets and all this stuff when you can just put up scrims and use a Kemper or use a Fractal. And it's, to that end, I mean, that is touring, right? Dragging hardware around the world is very expensive and all that kind of stuff. So, with soft goods and video production and all these kind of things, how much has that started to come into play now in your world of touring your band around the world?
Well, I think anyone who tours at all these days, who's at any level, it's kind of prohibitively expensive, the costs that are involved with all this stuff these days. I mean, I remember doing a tour in the late 90s or early 2000s, and I think it was Devin Townsend in the US again, and that was the first time I'd seen a silent stage. Pretty much, it was the drum kit, but nothing else. Everything was straight to front of house. First time I'd ever seen that kind of thing, and I thought that'll never catch on. That's weird, not having silent.
Right.
and with the cost of, you have to. I mean, what's 80% of your gigs now are flying somewhere, so you can't fly cabs and heads and stuff unless you freight it. So it's, you kind of have to do that thing if you want to continue to do it at a competitive level,
Yeah. I mean, even Metallica at the Back to the Beginning Birmingham show, I think had 4 cabinets on stage, you know what I mean? Which is pretty small for them, you know what I mean? So it's from the smallest to the biggest back down to the smallest. I have friends, they talk about, and Joshua's getting ready to go with Bobby Burns to do Primer 55, and it's kind of the same thing, when you're playing clubs and whatnot. It's like you get young sound man, and if they see a band walk in with a Marshall 412 cabinet, they're just like, oh my God, like, what do I do? Like, I have to pull out the microphones. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's a very different world. The other thing I wanted to ask you too is, you've been through it, as any career artist like yourself would be. You've gone through a lot of different record labels, from EMI to Century Media, Music for Nations, all this stuff. Talk about those transitions, about either creatively what it did for you, or just even kind of the landscape, how it was, the right move.
Well, it's all been for different reasons, really. I mean, when we first signed to a record label, I don't know how it was for you, but we had like 2 demos out in sort of 88, I think it was, and we got offers the same week or within a 2-3 week period from 4 labels. I think there was Relativity in America. There was Emo Records, Peaceful Records, and Roadrunner Records, all offered us a deal. And we just so green at the time. It's just like who's nearest to geographically, and that's why you signed to them. That was it. So we signed to Peaceful Records. We only signed to them for 2, so we did 2 records. That led on to Music for Nations picking us up. And they were kind of still riding on the coattails of the Metallica stuff, really,
right,
at the time, you know. So they were looking for someone to kind of fill a void there, I guess. You can't fill that void, obviously. But they were looking to generate that kind of feel for the label. So they pulled us in there, and that was great. I loved Music for Nations. I thought it was one of the last times I remember it feeling like a real family at a label, you know, where you go into a room and everyone says hi and everyone's like genuinely happy to see you. And you're allowed to go and raid the vinyl closet and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
You know, it was good days. It was really, really fun. But then things start to get bigger, and you're constrained by budgets. At the time, it was video budgets because Headbangers Ball and MTV and things like that. Videos, it was all about the video, and it just got super expensive, and Music for Nations couldn't afford that type of thing anymore. So we moved to that's why we did the EMI thing, which a lot of bands did around that time. I think mid-90s. I remember a lot of bands who came from where we came from, signing to major labels. I know Carcass did it. A few other bands did it as well, and pretty much across the board, everyone regretted it because you became a small fish in a big sea then, and you became someone else's tax liability. You know, it was just, and many in suits not understanding what you were doing. You know, and yeah, I remember being pretty miserable on EMI.
It's interesting. We were on Capitol EMI. Obviously, that was great in the 80s, right? Mid 80s, coming up into that, and probably a different trajectory. You know, I know other bands that went from, like, say, Century Media, who you were also with, right? And then they went up to Atlantic and other things. And it was horrible. They had kind of the same thing that you did. You know, like your Music for Nations story. You know, they were one of those cool labels. I remember when we were on Combat, and, you know, then those early days, you know, which was Relativity. And then Music for Nations was the partner. And you're right. It was kind of the house Metallica helped build, you know, to some degree. But you're right. A lot of these major labels, I mean, look, Capitol was the house of the Beatles and Frank Sinatra and Tina Turner and, you know, Bob Seger, you know, and then, you know, all of us coming in at a different time. And certainly overseas, you know, they had, you know, I would think for Music for Nations, like, those are metalheads, those are rockers. Like, so like you say, when you walked in the door, they knew who you were. They're probably fans of your music. They owned your records. They had your records, and there was a good synergy there, right? Like, you felt like you were part of the same tribe, as opposed to moving maybe up to EMI, where it's like you're really out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah, and I think I mean, I guess it's luck of the draw with who you get at labels. I mean, Capitol EMI, like you say, in America, it might have been just the people were right.
Yeah.
That office or whatever. But we were dealing mainly with EMI Germany. And it was just marketing men in suits. So, you know, it wasn't that family, metalhead family type thing. And I remember going for a dinner with them, because everyone used to go for dinners back then. I don't think they really did.
Right. They would charge us for those, by the way. We would end up paying for those. We didn't know. We're like, wow, this is great. And that was Erwin Bach, right? That was Tina Turner's husband. I don't know if we ever did dinner with him. I remember he picked me and Dave up one time. He took us to the Nuremberg racetrack and he said, hey, got to stop by the house real quick. And we go up to some mansion in the forest. We're like, holy shit, Tina Turner's in there. You know what I mean? But that was the president of Germany EMI. So I don't know, maybe you had a dinner with him too somewhere along the way, you know?
Well, no, I remember going for dinner with a couple of guys who, I don't know who they were. I don't think it was that guy, but they were waxing lyrical about the Thorn EMI days. So you remember it was Thorn EMI?
Yeah, right.
So when I came back from that dinner, I thought, I wonder why they were so like, oh, about Thorn and stuff like that. And so I looked it up. Thorn were an arms dealer.
Yes.
Wow.
So it was like they were like, oh, the good old days when we were an arms dealer, you know.
Dude, you know what's so funny about that, man, is we did, and I remember it was 92, Countdown to Extinction. We play in Sacramento. We just played the Bay Area the night before, San Francisco. We played then the Bay Area, and the singer for the Dead Kennedys was there. God, what is his name? Erase me. Please help me. Yeah, Jello. Yeah, Jello. So Jello's there. And of course, we're all fans of his. So I remember we were talking to him for a minute, and Dave had a longer conversation with him, and he recounted how the conversation was going great until he found out we were on EMI, and then that whole thing. Those guys are bomb makers, and they're the leaders of bombs, and they started these wars. They didn't start the war, but they led the bomb, and it turned into this whole thing. So you talk about like, a punker, like going, fuck those guys. We just make records.
Many songs about it. There was many songs about it, wasn't there, in the punk scene? Fuck EMI and all the rest of it.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking earlier when you said you got that punk rock collection. You signed with EMI after the Sex Pistols basically come out and tell you like, no, don't do it.
I know, and then you go and make the same mistakes. Yeah, it's poetry, isn't it?
No, it's funny. You're right. I think for Capitol, and then with EMI being the counterpart internationally, it was an entirely different story, because then they were just told by Capitol USA, do this, do that. This is our artist, take care of them. So we had a good experience with it. But yeah, it's interesting that you had that experience, signed directly to them on that side of the pond.
But I mean, I guess the Capitol thing, that's more like Nuclear Blast is these days under Believe Music.
Yeah,
it's owned by a big conglomerate. But you still kind of deal with little pockets of family people who are metal people who are there. You can go in and it's still a nice atmosphere and stuff. So you kind of get the best of both worlds,
Sure.
I was watching some stuff earlier, getting ready for the interview, Greg. And one thing you brought up was you like playing the slower songs live as opposed to kind of some of the faster songs. But in like in a festival setting, you can kind of look out, and I'm assuming you can look out and see who the Paradise Lost fans are. And then the guys are like, what is going on? Like, I'm going to go grab a beer. Like you can almost tell who is a true fan of you guys and maybe, the others.
I guess. But I think for me, it's just, I'm very, we've always been our own worst enemy in a way. We're very subversive. So it's like whenever anything's the done thing, you try and do the opposite sort of thing. So, I mean, I know at festivals, a lot of American bands at festivals used to say about us, isn't that British band that just sits in a corner on their own? And it's just, we never got the whole high-fiving thing, everyone, a big clan together. We're all, I've got friends who are plumbers. You'd have to be a musician to be my friend, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, yeah, it's a subversive thing, I think. So when you're playing live, you think everyone wants you to play these crowd-friendly hits, and loads of people do cover versions to try and win the crowd over. And I get it. But something in me always says, right, I want to play the most inaccessible, slowest song possible to just separate the men from the boys here, like see what the score is, And yeah, sometimes it's suicide, so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
Well, that's kind of almost punk rock in its own thing. It's like, the audience wants this, well, we're going to do that, right? And
I mean, I always loved it when other bands did it. I mean, you see other bands play a real slow song or something. I used to think, wow, no one's moving around, but this sounds awesome because there's so much space for it, especially at big gigs, because you just got a bomb of a snare going off and stuff like that in the slow songs, So it's it's a personal taste thing, maybe,
That's actually what David's talked about that a lot on the podcast, is where like thrash is really not meant to be played in huge stadiums because there's so much going on musically that you get lost. It gets lost in the arenas and things like that. But with the Paradise Lost show, I'm assuming, it just everything's kind of the warmth of the crowd and the music and everything else is probably meant for much larger stages.
Well, the slower songs, I mean, anybody who plays slower songs, they're definitely made for cavernous spaces, I'd agree with you on the thrash thing. I mean, because I was into thrash. That's how I got into metal, really, through the thrash stuff, because I was into punk, and that started to blend into metal at some point, didn't it? Well, Metallica was some of the first people to do it, but Motorhead were the only band that everyone was allowed to like. I mean,
Right.
if you were metal, everyone was allowed to like it. But until that's until the mid 80s. And then sort of mid 80s sometime, everything sort of, it was allowed then. And that was the thrash scene, I think. And yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think that I always imagine it in sweaty clubs, fist banging in sweaty clubs. That was the whole thing that it was about for me then. I'm not sure I'd like it too much these days. I don't know, but
so on the festival circuit, you talk about that, the tempos and all that kind of stuff, and festivals, are a big mishmash of fans from all the bands, many genres, all the stuff, right? And that's what makes it so cool. What's kind of your favorite of that? And I know nobody has the one favorite, but is it kind of the big Wacken thing? Are you a fan of these sort of smaller niche festivals throughout Europe? What's your experience been with that?
If I was to go as a punter, it would be the small niche festivals, I think, because then you're going to see a couple of specific bands that you really want to see. As playing in a band, I think it's got to be somewhere where after playing them for years, it's little things like the stage crew's got to be on point, the catering's got to be good, they've got to treat the bands okay, the layout's got to be nice. It's weird after so many years of so many festivals that so many still get it so wrong. Something like Grass Pop in Belgium do it really well. Everything's bang on, you can't fault it at all. But there's still quite a few that you just think, why are they still doing reduced riders for bands? And why is the catering still just, I don't know, diced peas and carrots out of a pot? It's like, surely you're getting paid enough for this festival, so some festivals are great. Grass Pop's one that really stands out to me. Hellfest has got a lot better.
Yes.
Years ago, it was that thing. It was that everything was a bit of a mishmash. The catering wasn't great, and then it just kind of pulled it together, and it's superb now. So I think it's a learning experience for promoters as well, and everyone involved. To get something working. I don't think you could take a blueprint and make it work, because it all depends on what the locale is.
Right. Now, with the new record, I assume what is your touring schedule? I assume you're going to be heading into. You got stuff happening now, and then you're heading into the big festival season next year, I assume, right?
Yeah, well, we've just finished this year's festivals, like I said the other day. But we were also touring with King Diamond at the same time, so we were kind of out with him, and then dipping into festivals along the way, and he was doing the same thing.
Right.
So we've been out for like 4 months or more already, before this is even out. We'd start the album tour for this. We're going to do it in like 4 stints, because historically we'd do like 8-week tours, 7-8 week tours. And it just, no one likes each other by the 4th week. No one wants to play anymore after 4 weeks. No one wants.
Hey, for some bands, it's 3 weeks.
Well, there you go. So we finally convinced our manager, because he manages Opeth as well, and Opeth have done the same thing. So we finally convinced them, look, we'll do as many tours as you want, just make them no longer than 4 weeks.
Right.
So you do 4 weeks, do a couple of weeks off, we'll do another 4 weeks, we'll do whatever. Because then you've still got a little bit of enthusiasm left, So
yeah.
October we go out. We do 4 weeks there. October through November. Then we've got some just a few little bits in December. Then we're doing still called that? No, 70,000 tons January.
Okay. Yeah, nice.
Oh, nice.
We're going to tie in some East Coast dates with that, and then there'll be a second part of a tour somewhere, which then heads into Scandinavia and the Baltics and stuff. I mean, everything's kind of spread a bit now. Before, when you did European tour, you do probably the gas countries: Germany, Austria, Switzerland, maybe a bit of France, maybe one in Scandinavia, a couple in, and now it's kind of spread a little bit, so you can get out to those further flung areas, So it makes more sense to do it in 4-week bursts, because then you can cover more ground,
Diving into, getting ready for the interview. Like I said, I went back and watched a few interviews that you did over the years. And one thing that kind of kept popping up was that 94 interview that you did with Typo Negative for Headbangers Ball. How did that come about? And just looking back on that, there's a lot of I guess prophetic things that Peter and those guys had to say.
Well, I mean that was I was back again. So,
yeah.
We lost you there. The Typo Negative thing came about. That interview came about because I'd just done a tour the year before in America, and I was free and single at the time. So in New York, I was having a dalliance with a young lady who
there you go.
turned out to be Pete Steele's girlfriend, called Tara from Staten Island, and I didn't know this obviously at the time. So he got wind of this. We were both getting our videos played a little bit on Headbangers Ball. And he said he'd only do this interview. It was their first show in London. If I went down and did the interview, and I thought it was odd at the time, but I just said, okay. So I went down to London and I walked in the bar of the place they were playing, and he's like towering tall, obviously, and he had this big train driver's cap on. And he said, "Mr. Mackintosh, we need to talk." And I'm like, "Oh shit, what's this? What's going on here?" He told me about it, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." And he says, "Oh, I'm just playing with you, And we got on really well after that, and we did the interview. And I kind of stayed pen pals with him for about a year. Then I sent him our Icon album. He sent me his Bloody Kisses album, and we hit it off quite well, So it was we had very similar influences growing up, and. So that came about, and people have talked about that interview that I did with him a lot over the years. But it was, I guess it's because it was their first time in the UK. They'd never done the UK before, and Headbangers Ball was a big thing then, so a lot of traction,
No, what I'm saying is, growing up a Kiss fan and Beatles before and stuff, it's like these guys would put out a record every 6 months, and then you look at it now through our lens of the kind of touring that we all do now. World tour, put out an album, you can get an 18, 24-month cycle out of the touring because you can go everywhere around the world, India, Indonesia, South America, the whole thing, right? Back then, they would basically play, I guess, probably in Europe if you were the Beatles. If you were Kiss, you would play America, maybe go to Europe for like a week or two, and then you'd come home. Going to Japan was a big deal. That was celebrated, and it was probably a week long, and then come back home. So, today, in making albums like we do and these tour cycles, of course, later in our careers, we have this catalog of material, to play, to pull from for our live shows. But, how much of, to talk about just integrating a new album like you are right now into the live show, kind of finding the sweet spot of that. If after a while you maybe find the 2 or 3 songs that work, you start to trim some of the other ones out. How does that process go with putting your live show together around a new album?
Yeah, I think at least 2 songs on any album that we've ever done have been purely studio songs. They weren't really meant to be played live. They're kind of headphone songs, you put them on. And, so then you narrow it down a little bit. And I think you'd start to rotate them. The first ones that you'd do would be the ones that I've never picked singles. So you'd go with the singles. I never know what sells. I've no idea. I usually let other people do all that. So they're the singles. And if those singles resonate, then you end up putting them in the set and see if they work live or if they feel right live. And then if they don't, then you rotate it a little bit, and see what works. But it's all a pacing thing as well, especially when you've got slow songs like we have. We've got mid-pace songs and slow songs. We don't really have any fast songs as such. So you have to pace the set so it runs along smoothly. You can't have too many of these together or that tight together, So so you have to make a set that ebbs and flows well. So we'd start off with the singles, I guess, and then take it from there,
Yeah, very cool. Josh, do you have anything more?
I got one more for you before we get out of here, Greg. Earlier you talked about, obviously Black Sabbath being an influence, and we can't let you get out of here without maybe some thoughts on Ozzy. The Back to the Beginning tour show, being able to get get one last Ozzy solo, one last Black Sabbath set out of him. And then he passes away a couple of weeks later, which is insane. Just kind of your thoughts on the whole ordeal there.
Well, like everyone, I thought I was quite shocked, obviously, because of the proximity to the last show.
Right.
So it's like who in a generation or even more than that gets to say goodbye in that kind of way to everybody, like a grand gesture, let alone the legacy and everything. But it's just like he said goodbye and then he went, and it's like, wow,
right,
what an ending. And I have to say, Dave, as well, didn't you play bass on the one with Youngblood, the Changes?
I didn't do that one. That was Frank Bello on that one.
Bello.
I ended up. I did a couple songs. I did a couple songs with Jakey Lee. Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, Frank. It was funny because Frank and I were talking leading up to it, and he was so stressed because I think they changed. No, not that version of it. Do this version. He's like, oh my God, it's like Frank. It's three. Right. So it's like 3 chords. You know what I mean? He'll be good. But it's so funny that Frank, that song. I mean, look, that's just stole the show, right? And I was saying to Frank, isn't it funny in your entire career, all this work you've done with Anthrax, then you play one song with Youngblood, now you're in the top 10. It's it was just such a remarkable performance. I mean,
I had a few friends that went. I was out with King Diamond at the time, so we were abroad. I couldn't go to it, but I was watching the live stream, and there was something a bit messed up with the live stream at some point. There was some bit rate problem. Some things sounded a bit weird, but what struck me was what a logistical nightmare it must have been, because it looked like they were throwing people on in like a few minutes, like how you got up there and did it, and like off and the next lot and the next, it's like, I know there's rolling rises and all the rest of it, I don't know all the stage crew, but even so, it seemed like a very fast turnaround for the sake of the live stream, so everything kept moving, so it looked kind of, I can understand his nerves, put it like that,
Yeah, no, it was remarkably well paced. Jake Berry was the production manager, who's really he's the old guard, best in the business kind of guy. A lot of other guys have come up under him, and it was a turnstile. So as one band's playing, they're setting up the next one behind it. So as soon as they're done, they raise the backdrop, flip it around, it's ready to go. I think it's funny when I didn't even think about it. As you're up on stage performing to the crowd, you don't even think like, oh my God, somewhere some Keebler elves somewhere have also, there's a truck somewhere with a remote and they're getting it ready for the live stream. You know what I mean? So as they're sound checking, as we sound checked the day before, that all that had to happen too, right? That not only for the audio of the venue, but also for the audio of the live truck. And yeah, you're right. I mean, what an undertaking. But obviously on the stage, quite honestly, it was pretty chill. And I think probably because we were all there for the better part of a week, kind of settling into the process. It wasn't like you just flew in, showed up, like like a festival. Right. Hey, 8 a.m. here's your breakfast ticket. Hey, by the way, you're on at 1 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever. You know what I mean? And you're just sort of. It wasn't so much of that feeling. It felt a little more like home, like we kind of moved into Villa Park for a week, and you kind of, you're used to the visuals, you're used to the enormity of the venue, you kind of got your bearing with it, which really helped. I got to be honest with you, that really helped.
Well, it was a hell of a show anyway. But I was going to say that the first time we played with Ozzy was you were actually on the bill as well.
Oh.
It was the Monsters of Rock in South America, Mexico.
Oh,
in 95.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It was Dean Castronova on drums. I think it was Geezer Butler on bass, wasn't it? Wasn't Geezer on bass? And then Joe Holmes on guitar. And wow, yeah, well, that's super cool. Yeah, that stadium there, right in the center of Sao Paulo. Yeah. And then I think we split off, right? Because us and Alice Cooper and Therapy, I think, went off and did our tour across South America, and you guys went off and did another one, right? It was a second bill. Yeah, interesting. Wow. All right. Yeah, good memory.
Pretty cool though. I mean, that was the first time I met Ozzy. He came in our dressing room, and he said hello and everything, and just went out, and we're all like, high-fiving each other. Jesus Christ. Was it, you know,
Hate it.
and then we heard down the corridor him kicking off with someone because he'd gone in the wrong dressing room. So it was like, the only thing is he entered the wrong door, you know what I mean? But it's good enough for me, you know.
He was such a sweet, fun, just humble guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you know the Ozzy on stage with the persona versus the human being who's shaking your hand, the gentle, kind man.
Yeah,
It's just like he really was a one of a kind man, and it was
Absolutely,
so sincere and, you know, good. I'm glad we both got to have that experience, you know, to just
yeah,
hang out with the mighty Oz. So.
yeah.
Well, hey, listen, Greg, thanks so much for taking some time with us today, and thanks for kicking out more new music, and, you know, look forward to seeing you here in the coming months and the next year on the road somewhere, probably festivals next year. So,
Yeah, festivals.
yeah,
Are
thanks for.
you going to be out at festivals either? Anybody?
Yeah, actually, Josh has got some stuff here in America. I don't know if you're going to go overseas with Primer.
Not overseas just yet, but yeah, we have some festival dates next year for the States. So
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
What's
And
the festival scene like in the States now?
what's that?
What's the festival scene like in the States now? Because they
You know,
haven't
it's
quite
wild.
nailed it last time I did a festival there.
You know, it's wild that, you know, growing up here in the States, and I would always see the posters for, you know, Download and Donington and all that stuff. And you grow up and you're just like, God, I wish we had something like that here. And then with the Danny Wimmer, the Danny Wimmer festivals that he's been putting on here with Rockville and Louder Than Life and Aftershock. I mean, it's close, you know, from what I can tell, it's close to kind of the, you know, the little bit more, I think, focused on metal, because you would get those like, you know, pink pop festivals with like Alanis Morissette and Sepultura playing the same time, you know, things like that. But yeah, man, I truly enjoy, you know, going to the festivals here, and they seem to, you know, they've been doing it for a while now, so they've kind of gotten it down to a science, you know, to where layouts are good and you know, the backstages are good and all that stuff. So yeah, I think they're catching up to Europe. How about that?
Oh, good stuff. What about you, Dave? Are you over?
Yeah, same thing. In fact, I got something for next year that hasn't been announced yet, but literally emails are coming in as we're on the interview. That's why I was just kind of like, get all this data shit away from me to stop our live stream or to stop interrupting our live stream. But yeah, there's some stuff coming in for next year. So that'll be announced here shortly for me. And I'm sure we'll be crossing paths in catering next year, which will be good.
Awesome. So it goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate it, Greg.
Cool. Yeah,
Thank
have
you.
a good one, Greg. Thanks so much.
All right, cheers on.
Bye. See ya.
Bye-bye.